My name is Wolfgang Müller. I work at the HITS, at the Heidelberg Institute for Theoretical Studies. The HITS is a pun because our founder said Mannheim, the neighboring big city, has the Pop Academy, and we have the HITS. So we are the HITS. Our funder is, it's not on that slide, our funder is Klaus Tschira, or was Klaus Tschira. Klaus Tschira was one of the founders of SAP, the largest software enterprise in Europe. What they do is enterprise resource planning systems, which is telling how many screws you have at any time of the day. And this was a game changer in the late 70s, early 80s, and they basically invented this type of software. So it's a great place to work. Klaus Tschira at some point decided he didn't want to do SAP anymore, but he didn't want to fully retire. So he made a foundation about furthering science. And that's the Klaus Tschira Foundation. And the Klaus Tschira Foundation does things from research kits for kindergarten children to a research institute. And the research institute is us. We are in around, I think currently it's 12 research groups with independent group leaders. I'm one of these independent group leaders already for quite a while, as you can see. And so the scientific databases and visualization group at HITS, we do science infrastructure. I came in after a couple of years when the group was already running. We have Sabia RK, which is a curated data source for reaction kinetics data. We are involved in standardization initiatives like Strander and Combine. We are involved in infrastructure for projects like Ferdim Elixir Denby, NFDI for Health, NFDI for Biodiversity. And the group is mostly biologists working with a couple of computer scientists, and I'm a computer scientist by training. And I studied physics and computer science in parallel, and at some point I realized that computer science is more for me. So in a way, I'm very much a stranger to this group, but I think it's good to have seen the moments where where you're most interested in your research, or the uncertainties you have in experimental research. And it's good to have seen that, and now I can program. So what do we do? So on one hand, we do curation, but on the other hand, we help people to curate their own data. And this is where Excel and tables come into play. So it's key part of our work since 2008. So one of our systems basically tries to store data, and it was quite clear that most of this data would be Excel. And we did some tools for making it easier to comply to regulations. One of them is called Exemplify. The other one is Restaurant, you will later see. We contributed to Right Field. We took up teaching OpenRefine since roughly 10 years ago, and when things become interesting to cite, I cite them. So what is this about? Looking at many things I've seen in this domain, typically things are about do things properly and do them properly all the time. And if you do that, you will reach some sort of data nirvana, where everything will be perfect. But actually, life is more complicated, and the other declination of this is, and I think it's something to memorize. I think if you do what's on this slide, at least partly, your life will be much easier. And it's surprisingly hard. Typically, if you write bigger programs, you create variable names, and you cannot imagine the effort it takes you to name variables in a consistent manner. And the same thing with annotating your own data to make it consistently is really hard. And and to make it consistently over time is even harder. But data management actually asks it from you to do this. But real people are real people. And for them, it's hard to be structured all the time. And yeah, I'm tempted to give you a panoramic of my desk, and you know that I'm a real person. So I'm with you here. So the translation of real people are real people. There two Roman saying comes to my mind. So already 2000 years ago, people said that making mistakes is human. So we make mistakes all the time, and times are changing. So and data is also changing. So we had some nice example in the previous talks about the evolution of how things are called in biology. That's one example. You learn more and then you call them differently. So what we need is to have tools for avoiding errors and tools for fixing errors, because we will make them anyway. And we will need tools for harmonizing. There will be different people calling things differently. There will be different times calling things differently, and we want to harmonize them. And this is where the three tools come into play. So one is OpenRefine. So OpenRefine comes out of the Google world. It was, I don't know I don't remember the name anymore, but it was a small enterprise, I think Firebase or something like that. They have been bought by Google at some point. Then it was for a long time, it was Google Refine. And then Google didn't want to do it anymore. And since then, I think it's an Apache project. So it's an open source software to make your data clean. And this will be the bulk of what I will tell you today. So Writefield is a tool about bringing ontologies and Excel files together. So restaurant is largely an idea on how to use Excel so it enables you to record, store, rerun, and trace changes in Excel files. And so there is a little bit of code, but the main thing is rather an idea. Ontology, I think, makes sense. There is a nice example in microbiology with cat and cat. There is a protein named CAT, and there is an animal named cat. And there are many cases. So if you want to find something in a big database, you'd better know which cat you're looking for. Or you would like your database to know which cat is meant. Same thing with spelling. You would like to use only one spelling of a certain substance in your chemical database. So for this, it is good to have some standard ontologies. So an ontology is a formal representation of concepts and how they fit together. So a taxonomy is a possible ontology. So not every ontology is a taxonomy, but every taxonomy is an ontology. Okay, and this, so if you link a table or a cell of a table to an ontology term, then you can say, okay, this value, for example, is a concentration. And or if you link cat to the animal Felis felis, then you know it's really a cat. So it makes sense to use these ontologies as sort of an authority of what you of what the data mean in your table. So this being said, with what I want to show you now in terms of OpenRefine, I touch upon ontologies, but not very far. So sort of a making of what I did was that I made a workflow on my machine with the most current OpenRefine and made screenshots. So for those who haven't got installed this, you can look at the screenshots which you can download after this presentations. And I want to present now the screenshots and saying what I'm going to do. And I also want to give at some points some time to really do something yourself or play a little bit, so that we say, yeah, I give you 5 minutes and then we are going to be back. On average, I've got, I think, everything combined, I have 120 screenshots. We are already 20 minutes in. So we will have to stop at some point or getting much faster at some point. But I think it's important to have the starting feeling on how to do things. So on my machine, it looks like this. And then I get this nice question. And then finally, a browser opens and I have a tab in the default browser. And now I can browse the files that I want to select. So you know what's 127.0.0.1? It's your local machine. You can buy t-shirts. There's no place like 127.0.0.1. There's no place like home. So that's you can memorize. And the thing after the colon is the port number. So what OpenRefine does, it behaves like a web application and opens a browser which then accesses the web application on the port 3333. Now we are in the create project. I thought maybe this is a good point to stop. So first challenge, you have the file gbif ugly. You should get a screen. So first thing, and then you press next, and then you get something like this. So this is a screen where it gives you a last opportunity to change things. So you see, for example, if the separator is picked in the wrong way, you would get one huge column. You would see it here in this. So we don't see one big column. It looks approximately clean. We like the first line. So if surprisingly the first line is hard to change. So so if you wouldn't like the first line, it would now be the moment to interrupt, to start over, and edit the CSV file to have another first line. So and then we import it. and we see something like this. And so we see it's quite a number of rows. Oh, by the way, I didn't talk about that before. So the OpenRefine, unfortunately, entirely works in RAM. So if you have a really huge file, it won't work. You will have to make a subset and see what happens. Still, what it does is pretty useful if you know how to export things. Where I realize in this very moment that I don't have a slide for this, but I will be able to show it later. So look at things. We click to show 25 lines. So here we can click 25. Yeah, next thing is click to show 25 lines. Somewhere there it will jump into your eyes, as we say in German. You will see that there is a small DE instead of a big DE. And what I also did is that selectively on some rare cases, I replaced a small a by a big E, which is easy to see. Normally, real life wouldn't be that easy, but you can see it. And now please try to change. You can roll over and simply go and change almost as if it were Excel. So for me, it looks like this, and then I roll over, and then this edit button appears, and then I can change this. And then I say apply, and same thing here, and I say apply. This is good, but just imagine you have 250,000 cells and you spend 1 second per, no, 250,000 lines, and you imagine you spend 1 second per line. This is 250,000 divided by 3/6. This would be a couple of work weeks of you scanning lines. So this, of course, doesn't work. So we need something faster, and they have some really nifty way to do this. These are called facets. So if you go into the menu of the class, for example, you go on this little arrow. Can one see it? Yes, one can see it. You go facet, text facet, and you click that. Then you get something looking like this. And then you can even sort this, but we want it rather by similarity. We see there are 6 choices. So, and if we look at it closely, we see there are 2 real terms with 2 types of errors each. And now we need to merge this. So we can now go to the edit. No, stop. So we have again the lowercase instead of capital, we have the correct, and we have the E instead of A. And then we have it a second time. And now we hit edit. We edit and we apply. And then the facets are going to be merged, which is kind of cool. And we also got the information that 1,210 cells have been corrected this way. So if I do a mistake, there's an internal undo. So it is really what OpenRefine does. And the thing where I said I should have done that in a slide is it creates really a list of everything you have done in a reproducible manner, and you can even export that in the end. if you go um, to the undo redo tab, there's also, I think, an export. Um, so with this, you can even sort of create a program that you can use on other files if they have the same structure. So that's really helpful. So you can really play around, and then at any point you can say, I undo the last 5 steps and then continue from there. Which, by the way, is quite nice if you are making a presentation and make sometimes mistakes. You can always go back and then go forward. Oh yeah, here you see the extract button, and behind that extract button is a way to extract the program you have created so far, which is formulated in a language which is called Google Refine Expression Language, and can be run by OpenRefine. So let's go to the species. So for the species, if you look at it, we have 110 choices which have been created. There, roughly 2/3 are going to be errors also here. But of course, you don't want to go to 110 choices and do what we did. I mean, then you will need literally hours. And there, of course, any step you do non-automatically will have a potential for mistake. So what they propose is the method to use clustering, which is actually very nice. So I simply go here on cluster, then I get in this view, and here it tells me I use the keying function fingerprint. There I must say I don't exactly know how the fingerprint is calculated, but it seems to work pretty well. And with this, it basically tells us I've found the following similarities. And it gives now the opportunity to say I will assign the most frequent value to all values in the cluster. So you have to check it, but you have a nice you will have a nice scrollable list of things that should be the same. So this is nice, but it's not yet perfect. So I simply used another type of fingerprinting, the n-gram fingerprint, and there you see it, or it also is able to pick out the omitted spaces. Then I can merge them. And there we see the sound-based methods. So the colonial phonetic is basically if you have a database of names, then of course the type of misspelling you may have is that people take the dictation wrongly. So things are looked at close which sound closely, and it's a different type of errors you may have. So here you see the first cluster, the Quercus rubra has not been introduced by myself. It seems to be really something different, and you would really have to look up what it really means before merging the cluster. So this is out of scope for what I'm telling you today. But you see, you could use this as a tool to iteratively go closer to a clean data set. And I think really making significantly much less mistakes than trying to do that by hand. So let's look at the numbers. There's something called a numeric facet, and it's really nifty. And now try to make a numeric facet. And you will be a little bit disappointed. At least I was. So I'm really happy that I tried this, because finding the error on stage, you have to be really cool. If you take a step back, no numeric value means it doesn't recognize that it's numbers. So it's simply that everything is seen as a string, so we have to transform the values. So I go to Edit Cells, Transform, and then I see something like this. So now I can do create an expression that transforms the value in the cell into another value. So my hunch was the number is seen as a string. So what I do is I turn the string into a number, and so I had to look up via Google the proper function, which is toNumber, and seems to work. At least the number that doesn't look much different. And now let's do this, and the numbers changed color. So this is what a number in OpenRefine looks like. That's really recognized as a number. And now I can look at my numeric facet. So X appears to be longitude to me. And there you see many numbers here. So, and there are very few between something pretty big and 150. So longitude 150 is somewhere near Alaska, or I mean, I realized maybe also New Zealand might work. But so if the value is from Germany, as we can see, it must be wrong. So what do we do about it? So you see these little handles here. So I can now use these little handles in order to restrict the numbers I see to select the numbers in the OpenRefine. To select the rows that are shown to me. So if you click on one or more facets, you can restrict what you see. So we look at everything which is in Germany, but that's the whole data set, and which has a latitude above 15, a longitude above 15. So I made an easy compromise. So 60 is somewhere in Arabia. And so I took that one because I mean you see the blue line here, this little blue line, it ends at 60. So I put this handle at 60. And now I see the values. And these values, if you look at it, they would be in Germany if the comma would be, or the decimal dot would be 1 digit more to the left, right? And so to me, it's not much of a surprise because this is what I programmed. But so I took it as a thing for a typo because if you type numbers, it might be that you get your timing wrong if you have one hand on the numbers and one hand on the dot, which is a mistake which I tend to make. Maybe you don't make this mistake, but another one which is slightly different. So, but in this case, these numbers are too big, so we need to select these numbers and make them smaller. So we selected them already. And we have 2,566. And now we divide by 10. So we go to edit cells, and then we say value divided by 10. And there must be some save button, which I cannot see due to I press the OK button. And then I get something like this, which appears to be correct. Yeah, so it goes from 6 to 1442. I'm unsure. So if it was about my life, I would look at the data again to see if I didn't introduce an error. But it seems to me that we did what we wanted to take the data that had been selected and modified it. And there's still some unfixed plant names. So, and this is where I wanted to try the reconciliation thing. As it turned out, I used for my preparation, I used the built-in Wikidata reconciling service, which for the level of sophistication you all have in terms of taxonomies and newly found species and whatever, is probably not the right way to go. There is, I looked it up, there was a GBIF transformation service. I don't know if it's currently up, but look out for it. There are, for different data sources, there are corresponding services to which you can connect. So what's reconciliation? Reconciliation is the process of you have one data source that uses some sort of identifiers for something, and you have an ontology, and you bring those two together by looking at the data. So OpenRefine gives you the tools on how to look at the data. So for this, I took the class and started reconciling. There it gives you, in my case, and probably also in your case, one suggestion. There could be others which you have to install. And then you push the next button, and next it asks you what should it be reconciled to. And then I say I want a taxon and I want to start reconciling. So I have to wait a little bit. And then I get a view like this. So we see that the level of granularity in what I have here is not quite what I want to have. So rather go to the scientific name and start reconciling again. Stop. I have to go play. So there I can say I want to reconcile each cell to the taxon, start reconciling, I get something like this. And this is quite nice. I get the link to Fagus sylvatica, and I can even select this. I can see that it's right, so I get a preview of what's in Wikidata, and can, based on the information I find there, I can take a decision and say, okay, I want to match this cell, or I might want to match all identical cells. And with this, you can go through the whole list. But you will see many of the plants that are in that species list are not in Wikidata. So you ideally would like to have another collection. So when undertaking something like that, it's good to first see a little bit to take samples on what would be a good source to reconcile to. And also it could be, I mean, Wikidata, you could also say I create new taxons for things which I know are a new thing and try to introduce them to Wikidata and publish them to Wikidata. Doing that is beyond what I can do today, but it's a way you can go. The other way would be to search for more specialized data sources, see what tools they offer. One way would be the way we saw this morning with R and matching algorithms and so on. And some will offer reconciliation services for OpenRefine, and you can use them there. Okay. So as the data look right now in real life, probably I would look at if I cluster first in order to do things more cleanly, and then go on starting to reconcile. So it's like every complex tool, you have to learn it and have to make your own experience in your own use case. I'm more a tool maker person, so I can help with ideas I may have on how you use it, but in the end, you have to get your own experience if it's useful for you, and I make some proposition. So now for something completely different, I was asked for some typical things which are really annoying and which you nicely can do with OpenRefine, and probably more nicely than if you want to try and write your own Python. It is quite often you have the units, you don't have the units there where you would like to have them. And or you would like to split cells which contain multiple values and things like that. So I wanted to show a little bit what's possible with GREL language, have one or two examples, and then that's it for the OpenRefine talk. So I have the standard value and the unit name columns. Sometimes you would like to have the unit and the number together so that you can copy it out somewhere, and it's not, you don't have to define a relationship, but there's this word consisting out of number and unit which belong together, which you manipulate. It depends on the type of person you are. But let's imagine we want to bring those two together for all columns. And one thing is, so this would be called joining. So here we see we want to join, we go to join columns, we want to join standard value and unit name and write the result into value and unit. And we press OK. And then it tells us what GREL expression was generated in order to do this. And then we have the value and unit. And next step, we can move the column to the left, and then we have the value and unit column here. So that was reasonably easy. Oh, it would be interesting to know if there's a common transform. So the other way around is a little bit more contrived, and I'm maybe those who are faster than I am, you can try on the side how to do this better. Imagine we had number and unit together and we wanted to split them again. So we had something like this. So what I did was first create a column which may put a separator in between the value and the unit. I must say, so regular expressions are really powerful, but there's a saying among programmers that there was this programmer who had one problem and he wanted to use it using regular expressions. Then he had two problems. So regular expressions are really nice, but sometimes they are not the right tool, and one has to get a feeling over time when it's useful and when not. In this case, they seem to be really the way to go. So we have numbers. They have a dot in them, and they have a unit behind them. So this slash here might be irritating, but the slash denotes the beginning and the end of the string for some reason of tradition. Okay. So these braces are not meant to be in the string, but rather it's a group of things that belong together. So the \d is a digit. The plus behind the D says at least one and as many as you like. The backslash and the dot says I want to have a real dot after the digits. But I'm not sure if I want one, is the question mark. And I want some additional digits afterwards, 0 or more. Okay. So if you think about it, this means I want a number which can have a dot in it. So between these two parentheses, I have a number. Okay. And this dot star means one or more, no, 0 or more characters, anything you like. You note it's a dot, but without a backslash. And this is also a group. This is group 1. This is group 2. And this here means replace this first string by group 1, followed by a vertical line, followed by group 2. So, and you see here what happens. I take the number, I make a separation sign between the number and the unit. And now I can again split into several columns by saying I take this vertical line, the pipe, as Unixers would say, as a separator and separate into two columns. And now I have my numbers and my units again. So with this, I'm at the end of the OpenRefine part. I'm much faster than anticipated. I tried to give you an idea. The tool is much bigger. I tried to give you an idea on how OpenRefine helps you to find what is wrong. We fix things by a single replace. We fix things by bulk replace. We fix by clustering and merge. We fix by reconciling. And we found by facets and restricted transformations. We had GREL, we had joint split columns, we had a little bit of regular expressions. The last line is a bit cryptic because it's faulty. What a database person, and I'm by training a database person, what a database person calls join is the combination of columns from two databases in a way. And this is what OpenRefine calls merge. Datasets from two databases and joining them by some properties, by let's say some species name or something like that, you also can do that in OpenRefine. Why should you? I think it's a great question. Um, and I think you already put the finger on the right point. It's all about reproducibility. So in my group, there are quite some people who help other people to modify their Excel in order to harmonize things. And what's really painful is that if things are done by hand, is that it's very hard to verify that things are correct and you cannot redo them. So something like R has the merit of being reproducible. So you have basically your code is the documentation of what you did with the data. And this is what OpenRefine also does. So the question is also, which is recently I gave a course to younger computer science students, and they couldn't understand what's the benefit of this because you could code it. And yes, but you will have to test it in another way. I think the benefit of OpenRefine is that you can explore, that you have a faster way of moving through the data. There are some things you cannot do, but there are many things you can do in the same way as you could do with code, and you can more easily move back and forth, and you have always a trace of what you did with the data. And if you are avoiding things like editing the cell in line 30, so the first things I made you do, they're probably, they, you cannot use them on another data set, right? Because you don't know that line 25 has a bug in that other data set too. But all the other things saying, I pick out, I make a search for this facet, and then I merge the facet without the space with the facet with the space or something like that. All these things you could export and then doing on another tool, on another data set. So I think that's the main point why OpenRefine is interesting. And it is, yeah, at the same time, it's exploratory. So if you have really big data, it becomes again a little bit problematic. I think then I would, if so, I thought about it yesterday because I wanted to show you a really big data set, and I cannot import it because everything is pulled into the RAM. And so what I would do in this case is that I create a sample of either you take the first 100,000 lines, or you 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 could take a random subset. There are in learning libraries of different languages, things like that are easy to get. And then you can explore the data set using something like OpenRefine. What's also nice about it, you are quite computer literate. And but I think it's also good to have a tool where someone who's not as computer literate as you are can take it, use it, and create some transformation for you that's useful for you, and then transfer it to you without you going like, now you install R, and here is this prompt, and don't be irritated by this little arrow here, and so on. So I think it's a good thing to have in your toolbox. If you are really comfortable with programming, I must say I personally use it rarely for my own stuff. So if I now have some data and I want to learn something from it or something like that, I would probably do a Python script with lots of printouts. But I must say that so preparing data for publication, I think it would be really hard to do what we did and be faster than we were. So I think your question is, I liked it very much because I could send you afterwards a talk I gave 2 years ago, where the main thing is really is this question, programming versus recording. I think so. I've been confronted with people. They use a file format maybe 5 times. So they have a sort of experiment. They create a file format being some type of Excel table, which is in the computational sense of where are the columns, what do they mean, and so on. They have extremely few which are really the same. If you want to harmonize these, you find yourself writing a Python which transforms A into B for 5 sheets. This, of course, on one hand, you have the traceability, but on the other hand, you will spend days for transforming 5 sheets. And so if you are in a situation like that, a tool which enables you to store a very good approximation of a good program while making your first transformation and then making some transformations afterwards, then it's a nice thing to have. And this, by the way, I'm now really tempted to first do restaurant and then right field, because it's exactly the selling point of why restaurant is a nice idea.